In this video, I want to show you how you can extend some of the common controls offered in Windows form applications and extend those common controls and use them to build your own. This video is inspired by a student who had told me, boy, it sure would be nice that if you could write to a rich text box as if it were a console, just using WriteLine or write methods. And the neat thing is you can totally do that, or you can make your own rich text box that allows you to do that. All right, I've started building a simple Windows form application. I haven't done anything yet. Here's the design view. We can go look at the code view. We see here's the code view here. And the goal of this example is I want to be able to go and put in a rich text box object, for example, like so. But instead of having a rich text box where I have to, if I want to write data to it, I have to call RichTextBox.append or do a plus equals and add a string to it each time, I would like to be able to interact with this rich text box using a WriteLine method or a write method. So I'm going to show you how we can do that. First, let's build our own control. We're going to build our own Windows form control. To do that, we're going to start with a class. Each of these controls are defined by a class file. We're going to do the same. So I'm going to go into Project, select Add Class, and why don't we name this class a console class? Or how about a console box? Instead of a text box or a rich text box, we're going to make a control called a console box that will behave like our console did when we were building console applications. And I'm going to add this class to my project. So we see it over here. I have a new console box class. All right, we want to make this console, our new console box class, we want it to be able to derive or inherit from the rich text box class. And the rich text box class is in the system.windows.forms namespace. So I'm going to add the using system.windows.forms namespace to my class file. And I'm going to go ahead and make my console box inherit from the rich text box class. So now my console box should have all the functionality of a rich text box. Now, without doing anything else, let me go over to my Form 1 design view here. And I'm going to say, go up to my project, I'm going to say project rebuild solution. What happens is when my project is rebuilt, my console box should compile and show up as a control that I can then add to my class, or I'm sorry, add to my form. And when I scroll up a little bit, I do see some DIY console. That's the namespace I made. Here is my console box control that I made, and I can grab my console box and I can drag it onto the form. So that's pretty cool. Notice that it's called console box 1. So when I dragged my console box object onto my form, it instantiated a console box object, named it console box 1, and I can see that I have all of the properties of a rich text box in my console box. Okay. Now let's go and extend the functionality of our console box. I want to make a method that works as follows. Let's make a method called write. Let me say this. We'll add a method named write, which takes a string of formatted text along with a variable, list of parameters to insert into the formatted text. Basically, I want my I want my console box write method to work very similarly to the console.write method. Remember, when I would call console.write, I could pass just a string into the console, and that would work. Or I could pass a formatted string into the console and add a variable. So in this case, I have two input parameters, or two arguments I'm passing into my method. Or I could have two placeholders and pass another variable into my method. So now the write method takes 3 input parameters. The write method takes a variable number of input parameters. the way we would define a method header that would do this might look something like this. The write method takes some string parameter in, and it also takes a variable called params, object array, I'll call this P. The params keyword here is a special keyword that says we are going to have a variable amount of input parameters. And those parameters are going to be represented by this array, this object array that we're passing in. All right. So I want to mimic this header file. Now, because when we went to Windows Form applications, we no longer have a console to write to. We have been substituting the string.format method to build formatted strings very similar to the console.write method. So the string.format takes some string s, and it also takes a params object array. I'll call it P. So the way this string.format method works is I could call string.format and just pass it a string of text as a parameter, and then the string.format returns the string of text. Or I could put some placeholder syntax and pass in a value. Okay, and I can do multiple placeholders, multiple variables. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a method on my console box that is public because I want the outside world to be able to access it. It's going to be a void method because it's not going to return anything. It's going to print something to our console. And I'm going to name the method write. And we're going to pass in a string s parameter and a params object array P. The reason I'm using an object array and not a string array or an int array is because when I pass a value into my string.format method or console.writeLine method, I could pass string values or numeric values or any data type and have it inserted into that string. And really what I'm doing here with my write method is I'm just going to build a wrapper for using the string.format method. Okay. So I'm going to say inside my write method, I'm going to say this dot text. Remember, since we've inherited from a rich text box, this is referring to this instance of the text box, and the text property is what displays the text in a rich text box. And I'm going to say plus equals string.format sp. I'm just going to pass the string value that I want to print to the text box into the string.format method. Whatever additional parameters are passed alongside this s, I'm going to pass into the p, the object array, into the string.format method. And the string.format is going to take these input parameters, create a formatted string, and we are going to plus equals append it to the text property. Okay. What this is going to appear to do, though, is work just like the write method does in the console class. And let's go ahead and make one more. I'm going to say public void writeLine method. And the writeLine method is going to take a string s and a params object array named p again. And we're going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to say this dot text plus equals string.format s and p plus I'm going to add a new line at the end of the string that I'm appending to the text property. So the difference between write and writeLine is that writeLine adds a new line character. Now that's all I'm going to add to my console box, and let's see if we can make the console box work like a console. So I'm going to save my work here. Let's go to my design view here, and I'm going to add two buttons. Well, let's add a text box so that we can enter data. And then we're going to add a button 1, button 2, and let's make these buttons do different things. So button 1, I'm just going to say write. And button 2, I'm going to make it say writeLine. And what we're going to do is when I click on the write button, I want to write this text to the console. And when I click writeLine, I want to writeLine this text to the console, whatever is input into the text box 1. So double clicking on these two buttons, I'm going to make I'm going to register event handlers for those. Click event handlers. And when I click the write method, button 1, here's the write button, I'm going to say console box, sorry, let's get the name right, console box 1, not dot text, we're going to say dot write. And I'm going to write the rich text box value into, nope, not rich text box, I'm sorry, the text box 1 dot text property. I'm going to write this into our console box. So we're using the write method just like we did with the console. Button 2 is going to do the same thing, except we're going to do a write line. So console.write line, textbox1.text. Let's test it out. Okay, so here's our form. When I click, I'm going to add my name, Michael. If I do write, we write it to the text box. And I can keep writing. The write method does not add a new line, it just keeps kind of writing the new text to our console. And we're using the console box.write method, we're not appending to a text box here. Well, we are behind the scenes. Okay, and then if I do write line, we add a new line. So I can say hello world, sorry, get that out of the way, write line, we append it to the text box. So here's an example of us making our own control where we can append data to the text box. Now I want to show you that we can insert values as well. So let's make a line number here. I'm going to make a variable in my form that's just a counter variable, private int count, and we'll initialize count equal to 1. And every time we click button 2, I'm going to add 1 to my count variable. Well, no, let's print it first. I'm going to print console.write, and then I'm going to do a formatted insert and insert my count value, and then I'm going to count. So notice I'm using the write method exactly like I would use the write method in with the, oops, sorry, not console.write, console box1.write. I'm using the write method exactly like I would to the console with a formatted string of text plus a variable I want to insert into it. I can format it to be currency if I wanted to as well. And let's see if we write this to the console. Okay, so now I'm going to say hello, do a write line. We have the number 1 is inserted into the console box. And then I'm printing a write line with my text. Click again, and we have line numbers now. Okay. All right, little rough video, but I hope this helps.